Hello, this is Joel Schemmel, your host for Talking Trends, where we explore all things real estate and all things luxury in the greater Sarasota market. And today we get to go a little bit international. We have with us Daniel Nielson with us, an international watch expert from Denmark. Welcome, Daniel.
Thank you, Joel, and thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure. So, can you just give us a little bit of background? I know you're Danish, obviously,
Sure,
but kind
absolutely.
of your background.
I live in Denmark, and I run my primary business in Denmark and Germany as well. I've been in the watch business for the last 10, 15 years. Started out as a hobby as a young kid, and obviously it grew bigger and bigger. And today we're one of the biggest players in Scandinavia on both investment watches and high-end retail watches as well.
Wow, Interesting. I mean, it's such a fascinating subject, right? I mean, it's kind of interesting to everybody, and
it is absolutely, and it's kind of a new thing talking about investment watches as well as just nice luxury timepieces.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a new world. Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of fascinating. I mean, obviously, we kind of explored the luxury market in the greater Sarasota area, and we've seen these kind of interesting trends a lot driven in the last couple of years. But I think they were already building before that. Luxury cars, the art world. People putting more money into those elements.
Right.
And they seem to be appreciating.
Absolutely. We've seen a huge change in the market. Like 10 years ago, most of our clientele would probably be within the 3% of highest incomes in Scandinavia and Germany as well. And today we see that like almost everybody in like the upper middle class and up income-wise are considering buying a luxury timepiece. And that's a whole new trend, and that makes it a whole another market than it was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's what's interesting. So just looking at the big picture, the international market for watches, the national market for watches, thinking of the US, I mean, is it just one market, or is it?
Well, if you asked me 2 or 3 years ago, it would be different markets. But today, it's pretty much the same. We have the same trends all over the world. So if we're talking Asia, Europe, the US, or wherever, we do experience the same market. So it's pretty much one big market nowadays.
And is the customer out there just wanting to have a fine watch, or is it playing into their portfolio of assets?
Well, there are two different kinds of clients. There are the client that thinks about portfolio assets and how to invest in this market, and then there's of course the more regular client that actually just want a nice timepiece to wear and enjoy every day.
Right. And the market in general, I mean, it's good for watches. I mean,
it's almost too good. It's almost too good because we got manufacturers like, for example, Rolex. We hear that they do around 800,000 to 1 million pieces a year, and they did the same amount 5 or 7 years ago. And if we have a 5 or 10 times a bigger potential market today than we had 10 years ago or 5 years ago, it's a problem because there's not enough watches for everybody.
Right.
So prices are going up. They're going up, and you would think that that's a good thing for us. It is, of course, but it is more difficult to sell a steel Rolex watch at I don't know 30,000 than it was at 5 years ago, right? So it's definitely getting more and more difficult for us to navigate, but still, it's an amazing market from an investment point of view, of course. Yeah.
And it's kind of interesting because obviously the real estate world I live in, it's gone through a similar process of all of a sudden Florida and the greater Sarasota area being in high demand, beyond the traditional demand, coming from mostly nationally in the last couple of years, but from areas that we didn't have buyers from before. So it's kind of the same concept, more buyers entering the market.
Same thing. It's so easy to sell watches at the moment. Yeah. It's all about sourcing. It's all about sourcing at the right prices at the right time. So we got the exact same challenge here.
Yeah, because I joke a little bit. I say I kind of work the black market of real estate. It's finding properties that may be for sale but are not readily available. So it's kind of the same thing. How do you source?
Exactly. And thank God we got a huge network in all over Europe when we source watches every day. But I was actually on a plane from Denmark to Paris like 2 weeks ago, buying one watch, flew back home myself, because it was a really important timepiece for a really important client. So it's a new world.
Yeah. That's fun. I'm sure you're seeing more diversity in your client base too.
I do. like most of my investment clients, most of them are not in any sort of like watch geeks or into like whatever movement that's in a watch or whatever. It's all about how can we find a safe harbor here. Yeah.
Interesting. Interesting. So one of the questions I always ask, because obviously we have experts like you talking about cars or art. What are the hottest pieces these days? And maybe on the same token, what used to be hot and is maybe not so hot anymore?
Well, Joel, the thing is, 2 or 3 years ago, I would have said a Hulk, a green Submariner, a green steel Submariner from Rolex. And it's still super hot. It's just got super expensive. In the meantime, it probably went up from like 10K to like 30. Wow. And that just makes it too difficult for many people to get a hold of because it's just too much money. So that would be a super popular watch that's not really selling that much as the moment because it's so super expensive. But if you look at something I would buy today, I would definitely I would look at Audemars Piguet, small family-owned, family-run business producing 38,000 pieces a year. It's nothing, and they're super popular. They got the brand value and everything as well, craftsmanship beyond Rolex, and so I'm definitely looking at Audemars Piguet for the moment, both for our end clients as well as our investment clients.
And that's interesting, right? Because I think your business model is not what we would think of traditionally as a watch retailer. It's kind of a more diverse. It
is, and it's more like one client at a time. What does this investment client or retail client, what is his or hers goal, and just work on from there. It's not like like the jewelry shop back in the day. It just developed into something else today.
Right. And so. We kind of talked a little bit about the market and how U.S. and the international market maybe is blending more. I mean, where are those clients coming from? Is it new wealth basically that's buying in? Is it more international still than national?
Again, 3 or 5 years ago, I would say it's definitely new wealth that are the new clients in the market that takes up a lot of space in the market. But today, I would actually say like. People that has been investing in real estate or luxury cars or stock market or whatever for years are now looking at watches. So it's actually a combination of new and old money nowadays. Yeah.
Interesting, because I think it's the same thing. We wouldn't. I mean, historically, I wouldn't. I'm obviously maybe jaded to a certain extent, but I wouldn't think of cars and art and wine and watches and as the best investments. But I think if you're looking at really the portfolio concept and everything that's going on in the world today, right? We have a lot of variables.
Many of the financial markets are just too volatile for many people's taste. And you can always go towards gold, but gold is kind of boring as well. And you're probably not going to do 10 or 15% on gold every year. And you can actually get that safe harbor with watches. You get that almost no volatility at all in the market. And you still get that like 10 or 15% a year, or maybe even better. Yeah.
And are there ever any new players entering the
manufacturer? Especially in the lower middle class watches, there are always new players there. I'm not even sure what's going on in that market because that's a way different market.
Yeah.
No, exactly. But in the other end of the scale. At the Rolex, Audemars Piguet, Patek Philippe, and all that, that's just old companies. No one is going to touch them. Super conservative. So no new players. Only a new market.
Yeah. It's interesting, and I guess we have had some fun with watches here. We a couple of our listings a few years ago, we had the watch expert from Sotheby's come in, and actually show some watches and kind of talk about. Again, that what are the most valuable out there, and so it's kind of fun to have that twist and turn to it. So, I mean, I always like the fun stuff, right? So, your favorite client out there, how many watches does he or she have?
Well, of course, I don't have a favorite client. All my clients are my favorites.
Of course.
But to mention one, I would probably mention my first ever investment client. Back in 2016, I did a post on Facebook calling 3 watches an investment package, directly translated. And the guy that bought the package of these 3 watches, 3 Rolex watches next day, long story short, he ended up being our absolute biggest client too. Yeah, he's in watches today as well, and probably bought beyond $5, $6, $7 million of watches.
Wow.
Yeah. And so of course it's an amazing story to have our first client still with us today. And basically we never lost a client yet.
Yeah.
That day will come, but until now it's just been an amazing journey to see how he navigated in the market and how he did use our strategy to actually make it work. So he was the pioneer, really. So that would probably be one of my favorite clients.
But that's awesome. I mean, we have the same experience starting, in 2005 when we started our business. We still have a couple of those. Well, we have all of our clients, I hope, but again, some of those that are always involved in our business and we're champions almost to a certain extent. What else is out there that we should talk about as far as the watch world and what's happening?
Well, I think it's super important to be aware if you're buying a watch for investment purposes, or if you're buying a watch with your heart because you love that piece and you just want to wear that piece. And it's very, very important now we start talking about investment watches that you can actually differentiate between those two ways of buying watches, because I meet a lot of clients every day that I want to do a good investment, but I really love this watch. Can I wear it? Can I blah 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 blah? And it's very difficult to mix those things. So that's something we are very aware of in this new market. And besides that, it's been really easy to invest because everybody that bought a watch from us in like 2016, brand new, right? It's worth more today, secondhand, 6 years later, than what they paid for it brand new 6 years ago. So it's been really good times. And most important thing is that the years when we actually been talking about investment watches has been like great years financial wise. It's been bear market, it's been bull market. We've seen COVID, we've seen the war in Ukraine, and no matter what obstacle, no matter what has been influencing the market, we've seen like 10% or better every year. So we're really able to navigate in good and bad times, and that's a really important thing to think about going into the watch investment market.
Right. Interesting. And we just did another segment in Talking Trends about the market, the real estate market here in Sarasota, and kind of where it is. We're just seeing a little more normalization of it, so there isn't quite as much craziness. It's kind of going to a normal market. I mean, is there any change in the watch market?
Well, I wish there were. I'm probably gonna sound crazy, but if I could press a button tomorrow and get a small correction in the market, I would love that correction, because it's definitely going to be easier to sell 10 Hulks, as we talked about earlier, 10 Hulks at, let's say, 15,000 than it is to sell one at 30. So a small correction in a super expensive market is probably not a bad idea, but we haven't seen it yet. There's only been one way for the last 10, 15 years in this market, and it's been up, without any volatility at all. Interesting. Absolutely.
If you were going to buy a watch today, what do you think is,
investment-wise or with my heart?
I would say both. Let's try both.
Both? Well, with my heart, probably something like the watch I'm wearing today, an Audemars Piguet. Not one of the Royal Oak models, but a more special one. This one called Millenary, where you can actually see more of the craftsmanship that goes into the watch. So that's probably what I'm into personally right now. And investment-wise, I would definitely look towards Audemars Piguet Patek. Patek is very, very super hot, super expensive at the moment. So is Audemars Piguet, but the potential right now, today, might be Audemars Piguet.
Daniel, thanks so much for joining us. So if somebody wants to reach you, what's the best way to do that?
Definitely reach out by either phone or email. Absolutely.
Okay. Well, fantastic. So it was great having you. Anything else you want to throw out about the watch market? I mean, it sounds like it's very interesting.
Yeah, basically, it's like all other markets. Don't just rush into that market without doing your research. And research is not Sunday night with your iPad for half an hour. It's really talk to people that know the market. It's super important to get off on a good start. That would probably be the most important message I have here today.
I mean, and that's interesting too, because again, never focused on it. But, I think if I was ever, now I know somebody I can talk to at least.
You do. You do.
If I ever want to explore that. So it's a very interesting concept. So thank you so much for joining us
Thank
today.
you for having me, Joel. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.